There's absolutely nothing illegal about one filming an officer while he or she is effectuating an arrest. Across the street, 50 feet away, camera on, videotaping, likely never going to be an issue for you. So in this video, it appears that someone was attempting to videotape an interaction between a citizen and a police officer in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Obviously, I don't practice in Pennsylvania. It's unethical for me to provide legal advice about it, crimes that occur in Pennsylvania. So for the purposes of our video today, we're going to assume, hypothetically, that this event occurred in Virginia and that Virginia law would apply.
Hey, Bud, the family requested that you stop recording. So if you want to go against the family's wishes here, then by all means be a jerk and record after they requested you not to.
It appears that the officer is now claiming that it was the family's request to stop videotaping, although it would seem weird that a family would request that.
I assume you guys got permission to be on the parking lot here from Mr. Sam Market. Is that correct?
Now the officer has approached, and it looks like he's intimating that he may be charging him with trespassing since he doesn't have a legal right, according to the officer, to be there without permission from the owner of the property. Unfortunately for the officer, he doesn't have the ability to render permission or not render permission to this individual who's videotaping from the parking lot. Only the owner can. And so the officer doesn't have any type of reasonable suspicion at this point to assume that he's trespassing just on the basis that he's videotaping.
Severin, did you get permission to be on the parking lot? Did you get permission to be on the parking lot? This is private property right here. Do you understand that?
Okay.
It's private property.
And I would say that this is unique. Most officers would not respond in this sense, but it would appear that the officer's trying to intimidate the individual taking videotape.
You guys are not welcome here on private property.
Okay.
So you obviously didn't get permission. You obviously didn't get permission to be here.
So
I don't know why.
Are you allowed to film an officer on private property?
I think you can film an officer from anywhere, but the question is, and what the officer brought up in this instance, is whether or not he had a lawful right to be on this guy's property. At that point, the only one that would have had a right to have complained would have been the property owner. No one had made that complaint to the officer. So when the officer went into the store to determine whether or not he wanted this guy off his property, we don't know what that conversation was, but certainly if the individual told the officer that he didn't want this guy on the property and that he had told this guy that he didn't want him on the property, then he would have had the right to have arrested him if he continued the trespass.
Okay, so let's go back to someone on the street filming. It sounds like there's a kind of a invisible bubble called, proximity.
Right, and all those scenarios are hypothetical. So it's going to depend upon a number of things. If we're investigating a single individual who's being charged for drunk in public and we're out there videotaping and there's 10 officers on scene investigating this, versus a scenario where you've got one officer on scene who's investigating perhaps a violent crime, has several individuals that he's trying to keep an eye on, and you're approaching from a distance and closing in with the camera in order to view things. Now his attention can't be focused on what's at hand. Now his attention has to be focused on what's at hand and what's coming up behind him. And if you're instructed at that point in time to step away, I think that's a reasonable request. And if at that point in time you continue to advance forward, I think he's well within his right to effectuate an arrest of you based upon your course of conduct.
If you're the passenger in the back seat or passenger seat of a car, the proximity thing doesn't really apply there, or does it?
Right. I think it does apply in the sense that, well, let's start from the beginning, which is we're in a motor vehicle and you want to basically record what your interaction with the officer. And let's say that in your hand you've got a mobile device so that you can film your interaction with the officer. Absolutely legal. What happens oftentimes is there comes a point in time where the officer says, okay, we've gone enough. I now suspect that you've committed an offense, whether it's a DUI or perhaps he sees some criminal activity going on and he wants to effectuate an arrest. And now we're talking about, let me see your hands. I need you to submit. And the individual who's filming, the individual who's the alleged perpetrator here, refuses to follow that instruction. That's where a lot of people get in trouble, and I think certainly an officer who has probable cause to effectuate an arrest and the individual refuses to put the camera down in order to keep recording, likely is going to find themselves in harm's way again with another charge of obstructing a justice at that point in time.